everyone, and welcome to the latest business chat with me, Glenys Chatterley from EBN, which you probably know by now stands for Effective Business Network. Today, I've got with me the very smartly dressed Tony Linnane, who's going to be talking about one of my favourite subjects, which is money. So, Tony, welcome to this chat, really.
Hi, Glenys. Hi, Glenys. Thanks for inviting me.
And tell me a little bit about, so you do financial management, wealth management and all that. Tell me how you got from where you started to now, and also perhaps more importantly, what is it about that type of finance stuff that rocks your boat?
Yeah, okay. Well, I started in the bank. My brother, who worked at Lloyd's, got me a job on the cashiers one summer when I was a bit bored. Back in the year 2000, I'd hair
Wow.
in the year 2000. Yeah, it's that long ago. And I started in a branch. I very soon sort of found out about the financial advisory role. I thought that was quite a nice job because ultimately I think I like helping people. You know, I like solving problems, and I like helping people, and that role ticked those boxes really. So I've worked for, in retail banking in the bank branches. I've worked in corporate banking. I've worked in private banking, and I've worked for some large independent financial advisory firms outside the banks. I came away from the banks.
Yeah.
And again, why I loved it, I was drawn to this job. I sort of fell into financial services like most people do, but financial planning really suits me. It is about helping people, and you can add some real positive outcomes to clients' lives, and that does it for me.
Yeah.
The financial all the financial stuff like pensions, investments, estate planning, all of that can be quite confusing, quite daunting. So my job really is to make sense of all of that for clients, to have their back, to be their trusted advisor, someone that they can call on and get to know them, really understand what it is they're looking to achieve, and set out a path so they can do that really.
Yeah. So tell me, if I were looking for a financial advisor, what sort of, obviously, you'd be at the top of my list. What generally are the questions that people need to answer before they engage somebody?
Yeah, okay. So if I was doing a search, there's probably three things I would look at straight away. And most financial advisors, a lot of the time you'll be recommended by a friend or a family member or an accountant, etc. But if you were looking for yourself, the first thing I would look at is if they're chartered. If the financial advisor is chartered, that's qualification. So the gold standard in the financial advisory world is chartered. And it's not absolutely everything. Qualification is definitely not everything. It really isn't. But my analogy on that is, if I was going to a doctor, I expect him, I demand
to be qualified.
That he's suitably qualified and he can do what is required. I shouldn't have to know what qualifications he's got, that he can just do the job. And my thoughts on that is that if someone's chartered, they have the technical competence, so that would be the first thing I would look for, really.
Yeah.
The second thing is independent or restricted. Now, this can be a term people aren't sure about. So an independent advisor, financial advisor, can choose products and services from the entire market. Okay. And a restricted financial advisor will restrict down the products and services that they provide. Okay. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Whether an advisor is independent or restricted, what I would look for, and I think is something to look for, is the recommendations the financial advisor makes. So if you came to me, Glenys, and I recommended that you needed a pension, and I chose Scottish Widows, And then the underlying investment is in a variety of all different companies, all third-party companies, you know, all the usual names, big names. That's okay. And that could be, but if I recommended to all my clients that they open a pension that was created by Fenchurch Independent and Tony Linnane, and the underlying investment is run by Tony Linnane, and Tony Linnane gets paid for that, I would have clarity about that. So, you know, that's something worth discussing, and your financial advisor should be open and straightforward, and there should be no conflicts of interest. You know, they should, you know, as an independent financial advisor, I get paid by my clients to be their guardian, you know, to work on their behalf. So everything should be out in the open and, you know, in the client's interest. And then, and finally, I think this is probably the biggest one, is, do you get on with him? Someone can have all the qualifications, experience in the world, but if you dread Bob or Dave or whoever it is coming to meet you because they're such a bore and they bore the pants off of you, he's probably not your guy.
No. And I think also that, I mean, and anybody who's listened to any of these with me will know, it's not personal if you don't like somebody in business. It's about something that happens, you just go, nah, not for me. And you really have to like and trust, I think, your financial advisor, because, you know, my accountant knows about my business account. You know, when I made my will, yes, they knew quite a lot, but not all the details. But my financial advisor knows everything about everything. They know my domestic situation. They know how much money I've got. They know how I've got that money. And you really do have to trust somebody. And I think just generally, it's easier if you like the person you're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. A financial advisor can be quite a long-term relationship, and can also be the gatekeeper. So, you know, a well-connected financial advisor is probably another one where they will know, a good financial advisor will know where their expertise stop, and you have to get some other professional connection in, be it an accountant, solicitor, mortgage arranger, etc., etc. So that,
I think also that I think that for me shows confidence in your ability when you say, I don't do this, but I know somebody who I trust who does, because I'm always a little wary about people who say, oh, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. So I can be a financial advisor and, oh, you've got a bit of plastering needs doing. Oh, I can do that. You know, and, you know, you need your garden landscaping. I can just stick to something and do it really well, and then admit when you can't do that, or that's not what you do, but always as a professional, have somebody they can be passed to that you trust. So so when you so when you started all this malarkey of business, because it's different being in a bank to being in business, there are similarities, I would say. There are things that I carry back up from my corporate world that have served me well in the business world. However, what 3 things, and everybody who knows me knows I like number 3. I've no idea why, but it's just, and it's an odd number, which I don't normally like. Anyway, back to the plot. So what 3 things would you say to somebody who was just starting up in business, or something that somebody said to you and you've thought, oh, I never even thought of that? So tell me those.
I would start by planning. Do your plan and research. If you can do a business plan, that would be fantastic. I remember NatWest used to have templates on their site where you could go on and you can pull off sort of a template for a business plan. You know, you don't have to be the best business planning in the world. And there's some great businesses that never done a business plan, but to just stop and think about what you're going to do. Look at, so what product and service do you want to provide? Who do you want to provide it to? Get networking. You know, get networking before. You don't have to have a business to start networking and meeting those people, because you'll realize as time goes on that the more connections you have and the better connected you are, the better service you can be and the better you can get in. Like I've always worked in Essex and London, worked
Yeah.
in City of
Yeah.
London and Essex, and you build connections with businesses and people and professional services in that connection, and that can be your area,
Yeah.
and that's that.
Yeah. I think
So
also that I don't understand people who don't have a plan. And I know,
yeah,
there may be an element of winging it in the plan, but
yeah,
it's about actually, one of the big ones is, for me, is there a market for what you want to do? If
yeah,
if everybody in the world does widget making and there's only 3 people who need widgets, what are you going to do to be different so those 3 people come to you? Or is
yeah,
it that you need to do something else,
yeah.
or not have a business and have it as a hobby or whatever? Yeah.
Well, that's it. Because and then when you start, I think exactly that. Adapt. So assess yourself. Like every month, I'll put a little bit of time in the diary to see what's working, what's not working, and adapt, change.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
just because you said, right, I'm going to do X at the start and it will work this way. It might not work that way. And
No,
be flexible to change with what
you're right.
works.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
find out and don't start selling widgets if you hate selling widgets. Do
Yeah.
something you
Yeah.
really like.
Because you can always go and work for somebody who makes widgets if you don't like doing it and get paid a steady income. With
Yeah,
business, it's more difficult because you have to do all the bits. And
yeah,
you may have people within your company who do some of the bits, but the reality is it all sort of flows from you initially.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I understand absolutely if people have got a job that they earn income, steady income to pay the bills, and they start a business, which then they get to the point where, is this the point where I now stop doing that and start doing this?
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, there's a program on telly called Farming Life, and there's one guy, well, there's a few of them who are partners of farmers who used to do something else, and then they had to make the decision, do they stop? So one was a firefighter, he's now become a full-time farmer. One was
yeah.
a couple of them are teachers who have become full-time working on the farm. So I think whatever it is that you do, if you've got a job and you're doing your own this new business, there is a point where you have to go, do you know what? Now's the time where I absolutely commit.
Well, that's it. That would be a piece of advice in itself. I think once you never have that perfect plan. It doesn't
No.
exist, and it can stop you. It could keep you in that job that you don't really want to do, or stop
Yeah.
great ideas. You
Yeah.
do have to have a bit of a leap of faith sometime and just do it. Just
And there isn't a
do it.
good time. There isn't. Some people say, I
Ever.
mean, you have to have enough money. I always say to people that if you cannot afford to take
Mm,
the money you are investing and throw it out of the window, don't do it.
yeah.
Because in business, there is a good chance it could end up like you have thrown it out of the window. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah,
I
absolutely.
well, that leads to probably a cash reserve as well. That definitely would be one. When you're employed, you get a monthly paycheck. You get monthly, like as
Mm.
if by magic, money appears in your bank every
Yeah.
month, whether you've been good or not. Sometimes,
Yeah.
depending on the time, I suppose. So, and if you go out and start for yourself, especially in that first year, that there's going to be a time delay and quite a long time delay between you've sold your product or given your
Yeah.
service and
Yeah.
you have money appear in your bank. So
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely have a bit of a cash buffer that will
Yeah.
see you through, for a good amount of time, so you
Yeah.
can build up the connections and
Yeah.
make, so you can feed yourself and pay your bills. I think that
Yeah.
would be a good one. And just because you're setting up by yourself, I also think that build your team around you. It might be an external accountant that you use,
Yes.
a financial advisor, etc. But they can be your part of your team.
Absolutely. Yeah. And anybody who's ever listened to anything about, for me, networking knows that
Yeah,
for me, that's a part. It's having suppliers that you trust that are part of your team. It's also having people who you become good friends with, sometimes only on a business basis. And they're people who, when it's all not quite going to plan, you can, and not in a good way, you can ring up and go, oh my giddy aunt, you'll never guess what's happened today. So I think you're right, absolutely. It's it's a self-employment, whatever disguise that comes under, is a very lonely place. There are, I can always remember sitting in my office waiting for the phone to ring. And I sort of knew that the phone wasn't going to ring if I didn't do something, but I didn't quite know what to do, and being overwhelmed by that. There used to be a government advisory thing, which basically I used probably way more than they were expecting people to use it, because I didn't know. I knew what it was like to, manage a budget, plan projects, all of that stuff. But it's different when you're working for yourself. And it's and there's part of that panic that can set in when actually that contract didn't pay, or it didn't pay as well, or they didn't pay me yet, or it's all of that. So this, I mean, I know from talking to you and knowing you that this thing that you were talking about earlier is about helping people and supporting people, and in a way becoming part of their team in whatever disguise that is. I think that's what I know about you.
No, absolutely. You, as you said, a financial advisor is in quite a privileged place. They get to know, people tell financial advisors stuff they'll only tell their doctors and very close friends. You're in a very privileged position, and a position of trust. But it's there. You can really help people. No one wants a financial advisor there and gone changed every 2 seconds. You want to build up those long-term relationships and be that trusted advisor for the client and their family. And exactly like you said, you're part of their team. You're part of their team of expertise. So they don't need to know about pensions or trusts or any of this stuff. They can pull you in, and you're there to guide them and be their guardian, really.
I know there are some professions that I listen to them talk, and when they talk about what they do, I'm fascinated. When they tell me about the details of what they do, it's as if they're speaking Russian. And I understand, for me, I know your stuff, and I've heard you talk. The talking about people is fabulous, but there is a point where you talk about what you're doing and and I just go, oh, I know now why I didn't become a financial advisor, because I'm much more superficial than that. You've got a proper job, really, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, the way I like to do my financial planning is I start with a plan. So I sit down with every new client, and we do what is called a financial plan, so a financial forecast. So in order to do that, it takes a while to get to know the clients, understand what their goals are. Some people might not know what they actually want to do, and it's a series of discovering and having that structure that you update and change as life happens, and people get that overall structure, that plan. They don't need to know the ins and outs of a defined benefit pension, or the minute details. I'll give the client exactly as much information as they want. If you do get the odd client who absolutely wants to talk about quite technical stuff, that's absolutely fine and great. But a lot of the time the clients so, and if it's not, you shouldn't go on about it, because you bore people to tears. Most people want a financial advisor because they want to know that they can save up enough money to last them throughout their life. They can maintain their lifestyle, their lifestyle that they work hard for. They can look after their children. They can pass on money if they want to do that. And then when we pop off this world, that they can pass on the assets they've built up and the money they've built up onto their family if they want. in it without paying too much tax, you
Mm,
know. And if
mm.
you get the gist of that, we're
That's all,
all
yeah.
quite
How
similar.
you
We've
do
all
it
got
is,
similar
yeah,
motivations.
yeah, absolutely. We are, people have that. You're right. It's about having that plan. That's what I need to know. I need to know this is what I want to do. This is when I want to do it. And this is what I've got. How do we get
Yeah,
from here to there in
yeah,
the least painful way with me? And what
yeah,
can I do? And then I'll leave it to somebody I trust, you,
yeah,
to
yeah.
actually do the work. So tell me, in your spare time, what do you do?
Yeah. So I've got two kids. I've got 7 and 9-year-old.
Yeah.
So it's half term now. So um, looking after them, ferrying them around to various activities they do. Um, I do a bit of triathlon.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm usually training for. I do the Ironman triathlon, the 70.3, which is half of the full one,
Oh,
so I can have a bit of a life. So I do that, and music is another. Music's always been a bit of a passion of mine. I've started playing the guitar again, and I'm learning. I sort of got my son, introduced my son to piano lessons, and I decided to take it alongside him as well,
oh,
because I'm so bad.
fantastic.
Because that's something that I really like doing, and I can think when I get the time, when I have pockets of time, I'm either running on a bike or playing the piano or guitar. So
Yeah, yeah.
I
How
think it's nice to have something
wonderful.
for yourself.
Yeah, I'd love to. I've not got the dedication to do it, but I'd love to be able to pick up an instrument and play it. You know,
Yeah,
just I've got certainly several friends who are just whizzes on on all sorts of it, but mainly the piano. And
yeah,
they'll be talking and just start to, and you think, oh, I want to do that, but I'm not got enough, whatever it is, focus
yeah.
to actually do it as a, yeah. So this is what great fun. Do you know what? One of the things I love about doing these is I find things out about people and go, oh, really? Like, triathlons. I mean, not just I'm doing a triathlon, and if I survive it, I'm going to do. It's, oh, well, I do triathlons. I mean, you should put it on a CV. If you ever have to write a CV, stick it on there. The triathlon man.
Uh,
Yay.
it's my brother got I got my brother into running years and years back, and he went on and he did like a full Ironman. And if you do the Ironman competitions, they do them all over the world.
Yeah.
So you can go to Spain, you can go to absolutely anywhere in the world and do these events.
Yeah.
He did a great one down in Nice back in 2016, where I went and support. I was sort of his support team, and
Yeah.
he did the full Ironman. And it's the atmosphere, and when you're doing it, it's the people there.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
there for
Yeah.
hours
Yeah.
and hours, and
Yeah. Yeah.
people will take hours and hours slow at it like me. There's
Yeah.
still people
Keep
cheering
going.
you on.
Yeah.
It's
A
fantastic.
friend of mine, she does them, and she's done them for years. And she said the first one she ever did, she was in the police at the time, and
Okay.
so the team was a police team. And she
Mm.
said we went in the water to swim. She said, and I just thought I was going to die. And it was the people around me, both screaming from the shoreline and everywhere, and the people who were in my team who got me through it. And once she
Yeah,
said, once I'd got through it, I realized I actually could do it.
yeah,
And in
yeah,
my and sometimes when I do them now on my own, there's still the team screaming in ahead, come on, we can do this. So yeah, yeah. Well, this has been great fun. And when I meet up next, I'll be thinking of ways you could do more than triathlons. I'm already thinking of it. There's one in the
Oh dear.
Sahara. Anyway, another conversation. So thank you very much, Tony, for your time today. For the rest of you, thank you for watching. Now, don't forget, watch to the end, because otherwise you mess with the algorithms and we're not that kind of people. Then if you could, can you subscribe to my channel? Can you comment? Can you like? Can you tell your friends? And when all that's done, then come back again, because the next one, I might be talking to myself if you don't turn up. And again, we're not that kind of people. Thank you. Have fun.